get ourselves some points. Let's get ourselves this one. Now we've got 10 shots. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Back to basic. Got 110. Let's go get the yellow one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Back to basic.
I'm Xanderwood. I make indie games and tutorials on game development. I also play your indie games every week on my channel. Make sure you subscribe and click that bell icon so you never miss a video.
So I got this comment from Swapna Sasidharan. Is that how I say it? Could you make a tutorial for a store with a higher power shooting ship and you can buy them with points accumulated? Yeah, so I think I can. Let's give it a go. So a couple of months ago I set up a Patreon account to give patrons access to my pixel art and music that I create. I honestly didn't think this would go anywhere, but I set it up anyway because that's what kind of YouTubers were doing. I'm so pleased to announce I picked up my first Patreon yesterday, and big thanks to James Welch for being the #1 guy. In all my upcoming videos I will be giving shout outs to all my Patreons in support of the pledges you make. If you want to get involved, head on over to my Patreon account, the link will be in the description. For a small monthly pledge you can get access to all the music I make, all the pixel art I make, and you can use it in your projects and indie games royalty free. Okay, so what we've got to set up is the ship sprite here, and all I've got here is a behavior of 8 directions. In the event sheet I've just set up A and D to move it left and right, and we're going to program in the spacebar for shooting in this episode. I've also created additional sprites. These are called shop items, and these are just generic placeholder images to show the player the type of bullet that they can get, and that's listed on the actual body of the sprite itself. You could do more with that. You could put in a kind of animation that shows the spray of the bullet, whatever you wanted to there. But for this tutorial I'm going to keep it simple, and I'm just going to show it on the body so you get an idea of what it's about. This is exactly the same sprite, it's just got 2 frames, frame 0 and frame 1. Frame 0 is a wide burst bullet, and then frame 2 is a double, and I've just amended the top to show that. The 100 and the 50, that's how many points you need in order to buy that, and then the name of the bullet is at the top. And the way that will work is when the player has enough score, which is located here in this text object just called score, when that score is high enough, if they come over and shoot this, they will then change their sprite and take on that bullet. If they shoot this one, they will change the sprite and take on that bullet. And it's as simple as that. This sprite here is simply just a target. It's called enemy. That could be any number of things in the game, like enemies that come down, move towards the player. For this tutorial, it's just going to be a static object. There's nothing special about it. There's no behaviors. It's simply just a sprite that I'm going to hit in order to take my score up. So the first thing we need to do is put into the event sheet that when we push the space bar, we spawn in a bullet and we shoot it up towards that block. So let's do that now. So on keyboard event space press. Now if you don't have the keyboard in, you need to double click, and then under inputs down here where it says gamepad touch, you'll have keyboard and mouse. I've got both of them already in my game. You just need to double click and add it in, and then it's going to pop up here in the objects on the right hand side. So when we press the space bar, what do we want to happen? Well, the first thing we need to do is get the player to spawn that object, which is bullet. So we're going to type in the search up here, we're going to type in spawn, and it says spawn another object, and that object is going to be the bullet. We're going to do it on layer 0 at image point 1. Now you won't have image point 1 because I've already put it in. So if you double click on the player wherever you want it to be, and then click on this little kind of target thing over here, this little node like thing, you can have origin, which is the original origin point. Mine's bottom center by default, and I've got image point 1. If you right click, you can add in a new image point. I would do that, add it in, and you want this one to be exactly where the gun tip is, so wherever the bullet is going to originate from, and that's going to be the tip of my gun. Ignore all these other animations because I use these for other game mechanic tutorials. I've just got ship down here. You'll just have one, whatever your sprite looks like. Now we want to spawn that bullet in at image point 1. So if you look at this bullet down here, all it is, if I double click it, is a black square 4x4 just coloured in black, and I've given it 3 frames because I'm going to use the same bullet for all the different bullets that we can get. The first frame is the wide one and the second frame is the double, and I've just simply split them up. And make sure that when you do this, if you're changing the width and the size of each frame, you need to make sure that the bounding box is also the width of whatever you're doing. And then for the double one, I've just set it to the whole width of the frame because I don't want it to be too precise. Like if the enemy kind of gets hit in the middle here, I still want it to be destroyed. So that's not too much of an issue. You could, if you wanted it to be super precise, you could just use the first one and spawn it in twice, and then all you would do is you would give the ship 2 image points. So if I go to this one here and go to image points, you give it 1 image point here and then another one on the right hand side on image points, say 2 and 3, and you'd spawn in a bullet at 2 and at 3. But for the sake of this tutorial, we don't need to worry about that. The bullet also has the bullet behavior added. You can just double click and add that in, and then I've just left everything on the bullet behavior to default. So let's hit play and let's see what that looks like. So you can see by default it flies straight off to the right hand side. So the first thing we need to do is decide where that bullet's going to go, and for this tutorial it's going to go straight up. So once we've spawned it in, now we need to set its direction. So we need to add an action, and we need to go to the bullet, and we need to set the angle, and we're going to set it to 270. And now it's going straight up. And the way angles work in Construct is, if I go back on here, 0 degrees, if I put in 0, that's what it defaulted to, that's immediately off to the right hand side. So on a normal kind of compass, 90 would be immediately right, but it starts right. So 0 is right, 90 would be straight down, 180 would be immediately behind you, so opposite direction, and 270 is straight up in the air. So it's going to go straight up in the air. Now what's going to happen is when we fire off a bullet, that bullet's going to travel off the screen and just continue to go infinitely until we close the game. And if we're shooting a lot of different bullets, that's going to really impact the performance of the game, because all those bullets are going to be in existence thousands and thousands of pixels away from the edge of the screen continuously. So the first thing we need to do is add a destroy behavior. So we can click on the bullet, we can add a behavior, add a new behavior, and we're going to say destroy outside of layout, and that will take care of all the issues in terms of the bullets. So when they disappear off the screen and you can't see them anymore, they'll automatically be destroyed, and they won't just continue to take up the computer's memory in terms of being around and having to be counted. Right, now we need to set up an action, an event that says when the bullet hits this, we increase the score. But before we can do that, we need to set the score in a global variable. So right click, we're going to add a global variable, and we're going to call it score. And the global variables will track data across the entirety of your game. So whatever level you're on or layout you're on, the global variables will still be relevant. We're going to start the score at 0 because we start the game with 0 points. And now we're going to add an event, and we're going to go system, and we're going to say every tick. And that basically means every single frame of the game. So every split second, every frame, this is always going to be running. We need to go to the score, and we need to set the text. So we need to tell it what we want that text to say, and it gives you the quotation marks, so you could write anything in there. You could write score if you wanted to, or you could simply just get rid of everything and start typing score, and you see the little global variable icon, which is the same as up here. That's the one you want. Double click it, and then that will automatically just show the score every single frame of the game. So when we hit something and update it, that automatically gets updated too. Now we need to add another event, and we need to say bullet, and we need to determine whether it's colliding with what we want it to. So on collision with another object, that object is going to be the enemy. So when the bullet hits the enemy, what do we want to happen? Well, we're going to add 10 to the score. We're going to say, oh, not that one. We're going to go to system, and we're going to say add to under global and local variables. We're going to say add to the score, and we're going to add 10 points. We also want to destroy the bullet, because if I play it now, the bullet continues to go through, and that's no good. But it is updating the score, which is great. So we want to go bullet, and we want to say destroyed. If you just start typing it and it pops up, the bullet then gets destroyed, and then that's nice. There we go. Does that. Perfect. So that's exactly what we want. The score tallies up, and now we can get points enough points even to come over here and buy these new bullets. Okay, so the first issue we're going to run into here is when we select the wide burst as the shot, we need to turn the player sprite into that sprite. And at the moment, if I double click on it in my ship animation, I've only got the one frame. So what I need to do is I need to go into the wide burst and I need to copy this entire frame, Control C. I need to go back into my player on my ship animation, and I need to duplicate that and then click Control V and change it to the blue one. I also need to set the speed of this animation to 0 so it doesn't play, and I need to do the same thing for the double shot. I need to collect that, copy it, go back into the player, add a new frame. I can just duplicate Control V and delete the little bit in the middle here, which I don't want. And again, the animation speed is 0, so it won't play. And now I can change the look of my player based on the bullet that I have. Now, let's click on the player and we need to give it an instance variable because we need some way of determining what bullet type we have on at the moment. So let's add a new instance variable and we're going to call this ship. So it's going to tell us what ship it is that we've got, and we're going to make this a string, and that's basically just a text value, so we can pretty much put whatever we want. I'm going to call this first one basic, which is our default state. So when we're green and we've got just that one bullet coming out, we're in our basic state. We can now change it when we hit the wide burst. We can change our ship state to wide, and we can change it to double when we hit the yellow one here. So let's go into the event sheet and let's set that up, and I'm going to put that in a group because I like to keep things tidy. I'm going to call it ship state. I'm going to go down here, I'm going to add an event, and now I can reference, because we set that instance variable up on the ship itself, I can reference it in the event sheet. So I can come down here and I can compare it. So I want to compare the instance variable. And there it is, it's the only one we have on the ship at the moment, so it's the default one. And we can say if it's equal to, because it's going to be a string value, you've got to leave the quotation marks in here, so in between that I'm just going to write basic, which is the one we gave it to start with. I'm going to copy that out twice more, just Control C, Control V, and I'm going to change this one to wide. And I'm going to change this one to double. Now, what do we want to happen if we were in these basic states? Now, don't forget, because we put basic in here, we're going to start the game in basic. If you wanted to start the game in wide, you could just write wide in there as well. What do we want to happen when the ship's in basic? Well, nothing really. It's going to basically just default to whatever it is there. When we go to wide, we're going to want to change the frame. So we're going to go player, and we're going to say set frame, and the frame is going to be frame 1. So now, if I play it, he's green because we're in basic. If I change that now to wide from the offset and we play it, he's now blue. Okay, one thing I want to fix quickly is I want to change these from on press to is down. That's a slight oversight. On press means it will just trigger once, but we need it to trigger continuously if the key is down. There we go. Also, what I want to tweak as well, if you push the default controls, which are the arrow keys, you can move the ship around the screen, which I don't want. So I'm going to go ahead and disable those. So click on the ship, come down on here under the 8 direction, we're going to disable defaults. So now we can only go left and right. You can uncheck the set angle as well. It's not going to be relevant because we're not going to be able to move up and down. But now we can just go left and right, we can shoot, and we can't do anything with the arrow keys. Okay, so now what we need to do is program in that when we shoot the wide burst and the double shot sprites, then we change to that particular color. So let's put that in next. So we can add an event, and we can say bullet, and we can say on collision with another object, and that object is going to be the shop item, which is this. So you can remember I named it shop item, and this one is also shop item. Now what we need to do is tell the system which one is which, and we do that through the instance variables like we did with the ship here. So click on any one of these, it doesn't really matter, come over to instance variables, and we're going to give this one a type, and this is also going to be a string as well. And in the default over here, we're going to say with the wide burst selected, we're going to say wide. And then we're going to come over to the yellow one and we're going to say double. So now we've given them an identity, like they've got a unique ID here, 2 and a 7. I've also given them this instance variable which differentiates the two. So now we can come over here and we can say bullet on collision with shop item. But first we need to determine which shop item that is, and we do that with a sub event. So push B on the keyboard. With that selected, you get a sub event. Double click and we're going to click on shop item and we're going to compare that instance variable. And again, it's given us just the one because that's all we have. And I'm going to say if it's wide, and then I'm going to click on the event again. I'm going to push B and do a second sub event, and I'm going to say shop item, and I'm going to again compare the instance variable, and this one is going to say double because they're the only two that we have. If you had more, you would just add a list of them. So if it's wide, do this. If it's double, do this. So if it's wide, the action is going to be player set frame to 1, and then I'm going to copy that down and I'm going to change it to 2 because remember, frame 2 is our double frame. Now we can go in and we can change our skin, blue, yellow, but it hasn't changed the bullet, and that's because we haven't programmed that in yet. What we also need to do is destroy the bullet. So we don't need to do it on each individual one, we can simply go up onto the main one. So as soon as the bullet hits any of these, so either of them, we're going to say bullet destroy, and that'll get rid of the bullet. Now we need to add a condition. We add a condition by pushing C on the keyboard. So under the wide one, we know the wide one is 50. So select the wide, not the whole thing, just click on the actual shop item, push C on the keyboard, and we're going to compare the score. So we're going to say system compare variable and the score, because that's the only one we have, remember, and we're going to say if it's equal or greater to 50, then we change the animation to 1. I can do the same thing on double and push C on the keyboard. We're going to compare the instance variable and we're going to say score is equal or greater than 100. Then we can change it to frame 2. But that's not all, because if we do buy them, we need to subtract 50 from our score. But let's just test this out to see if that works first. So I've got 30 points. I can't buy it, and I can't buy that one. I've got 60 now. Now I can change it, and that's good. I'm going to get to 100. Well, let's just try 80. No, I can't get the yellow one. If I get one more shot, 100. Now I can afford yellow. So we need to go back to the event here, and we say if we have more than 50 and it is wide, when the bullet collides, we're going to go system and we're going to subtract from the score 50. I'm going to copy that out, I'm going to drag it down, and I'm going to subtract from the score 100. So now it's going to deduct from our points tally. So now I've got 110. If I buy yellow, it goes back to 10. And I can't afford the blue one anymore. Right, now we need to put in the bullets, and we can do that under the ship state. So if we're in wide, then our animation is going to be frame 1, but our bullet is also going to be frame 1. So we're going to say set frame to 1. Then we can copy that down, we can say 2, and we can say 2. And in fact, we've actually repeated ourselves here as well. So down here under the wide, we've set the animation frame, but we actually don't need to do that. What we need to do is instead set the ship's variable to wide. I mean, it works, you can see it works, but this is a better way to do it. So we're going to set the value of the ship to wide. So we're changing the ship state, which will then in turn change the frame. I'm going to copy that down, delete that one there, and I'm going to change this one to double. And that will be the same thing, but it's just a better way to do it. So now we can, let's get the score. Let's get enough to get the blue one. There we go. And the frame, you can see it's a longer bullet, but that's because we've rotated the angle of it. And if we look at the bullet here on 1, because it's rotated 90 degrees to the left, it's a longer bullet. So we can fix that in here by just doing that. this one also will need to do as well. That. Get me enough points. Give me that one. And now we've got the wide burst. Let's get enough points to get the double. Go. And now we've got the double. We do need a way to go back to the green one. So a good way to do this would be to give ourselves a limited number of these bullets. So if we do this and we add a new global variable, we can call it bullet count. And then when we hit wide and we have enough points to buy it, we can go ahead, subtract from the score, and we can add to the bullet count. And let's add 10 to the bullet count. So we're going to get 10 shots with that one. I'm going to drop it down and we're going to get 10 shots with the double. Now we need to say that when we push the spacebar, that we deduct from the bullet count, but only if the bullet, only if our state is set to wide or double. So we do that with sub events again. So select the whole block, push B. We can come into the sub event and we can say player, and again we're going to compare. We're going to compare that state. So we're going to say if we are wide. And again, I'm going to push B and I'm going to say if we are double. So if we're wide and if we're double, when we push the spacebar, well, we still need to do all of this stuff. So we can just leave that up here because that's going to do it generically regardless of what state we're in. These are only going to trigger after that. So if we're in wide, then we are going to subtract 1 from the bullet count, and we're going to do the same with double. We also need to add a condition. So if we hit the wide and we push C, we can go into system and we're going to compare that global bullet count variable, and we're just going to do it as long as it's equal or greater to 1. So as long as we've got at least 1 bullet in there, again we're going to drop it down and do the same for ship. As long as we've got at least 1 bullet, then we can subtract 1 from the bullet count. If we get to 0, then this isn't going to happen, but when we get to 0, what we need to do is set our state back to basic. So when we're in basic, we're going to go here. Oh, in fact, we can just copy this, drag it up. We're going to set the frame back to 0, and we're going to set the bullet frame back to 0. And we need to now add one last line of code here. We can say, add an event, and we can compare the bullet behavior, the bullet variable to the bullet count. If it is less than or equal to 0, so if we've run out of bullets, then we go here and we say player, and we set the state of our ship back to basic. So let's get ourselves some points. Let's get ourselves this one. Now we've got 10 shots. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Back to basic. Got 110. Let's go get the yellow one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, back to basic. You could obviously do that with a timer. You could say once you get double shot, you get it for 60 seconds, whatever it might be. You might want to keep that forever, in which case you can just ignore that last little bit of the tutorial, or you might want to do it until you get hit. So you could say if the enemy bullet hits the player, then go back to basic, and you do that in exactly the same way we did. We're just doing it by the bullet count. Hope that was useful. If you found it useful, give the video a thumbs up. If you're not already subscribed and you want to see more tutorials like this one, then hit that subscribe button and I will continue to make them. And if you've got any ideas for future videos, then do leave them in the comments. And if you've already left one and I haven't done it yet, please feel free to remind me. I won't be offended. I just do forget sometimes. I do go back through the comments when I make these videos, and if I've missed it, then I am sorry. But if you want it to be done and I haven't made it, leave the comment there again, and I'll see you in the next video. Once again, a huge shout out to my first ever Patreon, James Welch, for supporting my journey. If you would like access to all of my indie game music and pixel art, then you can become a Patreon for just a few pounds per month, and you'll get access to all of my work royalty free. The link is in the description.